The new year is always a reminder of goals achieved, but also dreams postponed. Don't waste another 365 days before starting your dream business. Do it now with the help of Shopify. Shopify has helped millions of entrepreneurs, from household names like Skims and Allbirds to first-time business owners just getting started. With Shopify, you'll have everything you need to sell online and in person. Their built-in AI tools write product descriptions and headlines and help you edit product photos. Marketing is built in too. Create email and social campaigns that reach customers wherever they scroll. As you grow, Shopify grows with you. Handle more orders, expand to new markets, and do it all from the same dashboard. In 2026, stop waiting and start selling with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/income. Go to shopify.com/income. That's shopify.com/income. Hear your first this new year with Shopify by your side.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite, obey your thirst.
Welcome. Take a seat. Tonight I have a story to share with you. A tale of haunting mystery. This is The Spirit of Fatherhood from author Gamal Frank. You're listening to A Night by the Campfire.
I don't know who else to tell or what I even expect to happen by posting this. I can't call anyone. He's always around. I'm recording this on my phone, huddled in my closet, hoping the sound of the old house settling will cover the frantic tapping of my thumbs. I feel like a little kid again, hiding from monsters. The difference is, this time, the monster thinks it's my dad. Let me back up. I'm 23. I live with my father. It wasn't the plan, obviously. College, job, my own place, that was the plan. But the economy is what it is, and my mom passed away a few years back, and he was getting on in years. He's retired, and his pension is just enough to keep the lights on in this old house. It wasn't a bad arrangement. I'd work my shifts at the warehouse downtown, help him with the bills, and he'd potter around, watch his old movies, and complain about his back. We had a rhythm. It was quiet, maybe a little lonely, but it was normal. The change was so gradual, I almost didn't notice it. At first, it was just nice. My dad, who for the last 5 years had mostly treated the armchair in front of the TV as a natural extension of his body, started moving again. He was always a big guy, a former mechanic, and age had settled on him like a thick layer of dust. But suddenly, the dust was gone. It started about a month ago. He went down to the basement to fix a leaking pipe. I'd offered to do it, but he insisted.
Still got some use in these old hands,
he grumbled, a familiar refrain. He was down there for hours. I remember calling down once, asking if he needed help, and just getting a muffled, "Got it handled," in response. When he finally came up, he was smudged with dirt and grime, but he was grinning. A real toothy grin, wider than I'd seen in a decade.
All sorted,
he announced, clapping his dusty hands together. He looked invigorated. I just figured he was proud of himself for handling the repair. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon and the sounds of birds chirping outside. That wasn't unusual. The unusual part was my dad, standing at the stove, humming. He hadn't cooked a proper breakfast since my mom died. He'd usually just pour himself a bowl of cereal and grunt a good morning.
"Morning, son,"
he said, his voice bright. I was surprised but pleased. "You're in a good mood,"
"Feeling spry."
he said, flipping the eggs with a flourish that almost sent one to the floor.
"Decided I've been sitting around too long. Life's for living, right?"
That week, he was a whirlwind of activity. He mowed the lawn, which I usually had to nag him about for days. He cleaned the gutters. Even started oiling the hinges on the doors so they wouldn't creak. I was thrilled. I thought maybe he'd finally pulled himself out of that long, quiet grief he'd been swimming in. I thought I was getting my old dad back. The first hint that something was wrong came a week later. I was getting ready to go out with some friends. It was Friday night, the first I'd had off in a while. I was putting on my jacket when he came into the living room, wringing his hands.
"You're going out?"
he asked. His voice had lost its cheerful edge. It was tight. "Yeah, just for a few hours. Grabbing a beer with a couple guys from work."
"Oh, it's just, I'm feeling a bit funny. My chest is tight, probably just indigestion, but, you know."
He winced and put a hand on his chest. I stopped, my keys halfway to my pocket. His face was pale. I felt a surge of guilt. "Are you okay? Should I call someone?"
No, nothing like that,"
he said quickly, waving a dismissive hand.
"I'm sure it'll pass. I wouldn't want to be here alone if it gets worse."
So I stayed. I took my jacket off, ordered a pizza, and we watched one of his old black and white westerns. His chest pain seemed to magically disappear the moment I sat down on the couch. I was annoyed, but I told myself he was just getting old and anxious. The next time I tried to leave, a few days later, it was his back. He claimed it seized up so badly he couldn't get up off the sofa to get a glass of water. I spent the evening fetching things for him, rubbing his shoulders and listening to him groan. The moment my friend called to ask where I was and I said I couldn't make it, he suddenly felt a little better and managed to get up and use the bathroom on his own. It became a pattern. Every single time I made a plan to leave the house, for any reason other than my work shifts, he would develop some sudden debilitating ailment. A migraine, dizziness, a stomach bug. It was so transparently manipulative that I got angry. We had a fight about it. "I can't be your prisoner," I yelled one afternoon after he faked a coughing fit to stop me from going to the grocery store. "I need to have a life." His face crumbled, not with anger, but with a deep, profound sadness that completely disarmed me.
"I just need you here,"
he whispered.
"Is that so much to ask? I get lonely."
What could I say to that? I felt like the world's biggest jerk. I stayed home. Again. But the active, energetic dad was still there. In between his sudden episodes, he was a dynamo. He repainted the porch, he fixed a wobbly fence in the backyard. He was up at dawn, gardening with a fervor I'd never seen. He was stronger, faster. He'd carry in all the groceries in one trip, bags hanging off his arms, without even breathing heavily. My dad, who used to get winded walking up the stairs. It was a contradiction I couldn't reconcile. The real fear, the kind that crawls up your spine and lives in the back of your throat, started with the sun. We were in the backyard. He'd been weeding the flower beds my mom had planted years ago, and I was sitting on the steps scrolling through my phone. It was a bright, cloudless afternoon. The sun was beating down, casting long, sharp shadows across the lawn. I noticed my own shadow, a dark, stretched-out silhouette of a man slouched over a phone. I looked at him, on his knees in the dirt, and I saw the shadow of the rose bush, the shadow of the fence, the shadow of the bird bath, but not his. He was a solid figure in the blazing sunlight, but the ground around him was unbroken, pure bright green. There was no shadow. I blinked. I rubbed my eyes. It had to be a trick of the light, an optical illusion. I looked away, then looked back. Still nothing. A perfect, shadowless man in a world full of shadows. A cold knot formed in my stomach. "Hey, Dad," I said, my voice sounding thin and strange to my own ears. "Can you give me a hand with this?" I pointed to a heavy terracotta pot on the other side of the patio, a spot in direct, unforgiving sunlight. He looked up, and for a second, I saw something in his eyes. A flicker of panic. He shielded his face from the sun with his hand, even though he was already squinting.
In a minute, son. Just want to finish this patch.
He never came over. He stayed in the garden, and as the sun began to set, he seemed to follow the receding line of the house's shadow, always keeping himself just inside it. From that day on, I became obsessed. I watched him constantly. I noticed how he never stood by the windows during the day, how he'd find an excuse to move if a ray of sunlight fell across him in the living room, how he'd always take his walks in the evening after the sun had dipped below the horizon. He was always drawn to the shade, to the dim corners of the house. My worry curdled into dread. The excuses to keep me home became more frantic. Last week, he unplugged my car battery and then feigned ignorance. A couple of days ago, I woke up to find he'd accidentally locked the front door and lost the key, trapping us both inside until he miraculously found it that evening. I tried talking to him. I sat him down in the dim light of the living room 2 nights ago. "Dad, we need to talk," I started, my heart pounding. "You're not acting like yourself. You're different, and you're keeping me here. I'm worried about you." He just stared at me, his face a calm, placid mask. The energetic, smiling man was gone, replaced by something still and watchful.
I'm fine, son. Never been better. And I'm not keeping you here. I just like having you around. A father can't like having his son around?
"It's more than that," I insisted, my voice trembling. "Ever since you went down to the basement to fix that pipe, you've been different. Something happened down there, didn't it?"
Don't be ridiculous. I fixed the pipe. That's all. Now drop it.
His face didn't change, but his eyes hardened. It was like watching shutters close over a window. The finality of his tone was absolute. There was no arguing. The conversation was over. That was when I knew. I knew with a certainty that made me feel sick to my stomach. The truth of what had happened was in the basement.
The Spirit of Fatherhood will return in a moment.
I waited until last night. I pretended to go to sleep at my usual time, lying in bed with my eyes wide open, listening to the sounds of the house. I heard him moving around downstairs, the soft, almost silent footsteps that were another new development. My old dad used to stomp around like an elephant. I heard him check the lock on the front door. Then the back. I heard him walk past my bedroom door, pausing for a long moment, and I held my breath, my entire body rigid with fear. Then the footsteps receded, and I heard his own bedroom door click shut. I waited for what felt like an eternity, counting the seconds, listening to the old house groan and creak around me. Finally, when I was sure he was asleep, I slipped out of bed. I didn't turn on any lights. I crept down the stairs, every step a calculated risk. The basement door was at the end of the hall. It was always cold around it. I turned the old brass knob, cringing at the loud click of the latch. I pulled it open and was hit with a wave of cold, damp air that smelled of wet earth, and something metallic and vaguely sweet. A smell of decay. My phone was my only light. I switched on the flashlight, the beam cutting a nervous, trembling path down the rickety wooden stairs. I went down, one step at a time, my ears straining for any sounds from upstairs. The basement was as I remembered it. Concrete floor, stone walls, junk piled in every corner. Old furniture under white sheets like sleeping ghosts. Boxes of my mom's things, my old toys. The air was thick and heavy. I pointed my light toward the back wall, where the main water line came into the house. That's where he'd been working. I saw his old toolbox lying open on the floor. A pipe wrench was next to it, and the section of the copper pipe he'd been working on looked new, clean. He had fixed it. But my eyes were drawn to the floor next to it. Most of the basement floor was concrete, but in this back corner, it was just packed earth, and a large path of it, maybe 6 feet long and 3 feet wide, was different from the rest. The dirt was darker, looser. It wasn't packed down from decades of existence. It was disturbed, fresh. I stood there for a long moment, the beam of my phone shaking in my hand. My mind was screaming at me to run, to get out of the house, out of town, to never look back. But I couldn't. I had to know. I found an old garden trowel in a bucket of rusty tools. I knelt down. The earth was soft, just as I'd thought. It gave way easily. I started digging. My breath came in ragged, panic gasps. The only sounds were scrapes from the trowel against an occasional rock and my own frantic heartbeat pounding in my ears. The smell of damp earth was overwhelming, but underneath it, the other smell was getting stronger. It wasn't a deep hole. Maybe a foot down, my trowel hit something soft, not a rock. I recoiled, dropping the tool. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone steady. I forced myself to reach into the loose soil. I closed my eyes and my fingers brushed against the fabric. Denim, the worn, familiar texture of my father's work jeans. I scrambled back, gasping for air, but I knew what I had seen. I had to be sure. With tears streaming down my face, I used my hands clawing at the dirt, pulling it away. First a leg, then a torso, wearing his favorite faded shirt, and then the face. It was him. My dad. His eyes were closed, his mouth slightly open. His skin was pale and waxy, and there was a dark, ugly gash on the side of his head, matted with dried blood and dirt. He looked peaceful in a horrible, final way. He looked like he'd fallen from the stairs, hit his head, and it had all been over in an instant. I stared at his face, the real face of my father, and a sound escaped my throat, a strangled sob of pure horror and grief. He was gone. He'd been gone for a month, lying here in a shallow, unmarked grave, while I'd been living with... The sound came from the top of the stairs. It was a single, soft footstep on the old wood. Slowly, I turned my head. My phone's light followed my gaze, traveling up the dark, rickety staircase. And he was there.
You're listening to A Night by the Campfire. We'll be right back.
He was standing at the top of the stairs, a dark silhouette against the faint light of the hallway. He was just watching me. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his eyes. I was frozen, kneeling in the dirt next to my father's corpse, a cornered animal. He took another step down, then another. He moved with a quiet, fluid grace that my real father had never possessed. The flashlight beam caught his face as he neared the bottom of the stairs. He was wearing my father's pajamas. He had my father's tired, wrinkled eyes. He had my father's graying hair. And he was smiling. It wasn't a malicious smile. It was a triumphant one. It was sad, infinitely sad. A smile full of a pity that was more terrifying than any rage.
I knew you'd find your way down here eventually,
he said. His voice was my father's voice, but without the gravelly, smoke-worn edge. It was smoother, calmer.
I'm sorry you had to see this.
I couldn't speak. I could only stare, my mind a screaming void. I scrambled backward away from him, away from the body until my back hit the cold stone wall. He stopped a few feet away from the shallow grave, looking down at the body with that same mournful expression.
It was an accident,
he said softly.
The second to last step. It's rotten. He was carrying a heavy wrench. His balance was off. He fell. He hit his head on the concrete floor right there. It was quick. He didn't suffer.
He looked at me, his eyes full of a strange, deep empathy.
His last thought, it was of you. He was worried about you. Worried you'd be all alone.
My voice finally came back, a raw, terrified whisper. What are you? He tilted his head, a gesture that was so familiar yet so utterly alien.
I'm him,
he said.
And I'm not. You know how every person casts a shadow, a darker, simpler version of themselves that follows them through the light? Think of me as the other shadow, the one that lives on the other side of the veil. We watch. We exist in the shape of our double. We feel what they feel, their joys, their sorrows, their love.
He took a step closer, and I flinched. He stopped.
That last thought,
he continued, his voice barely more than a murmur.
The love he had for you, his fear of leaving you alone, it was so powerful. A life cut short with so much left to give. It created a space and pulled me through. I am his love, his duty, his need to take care of you, given form.
He gestured around the basement.
I finished his work. I fixed the pipe. I buried him so you wouldn't have to. I've been fixing the house. I've been making sure you're safe. I've been trying to be a good father.
The words were insane, but in the cold, damp air of that tomb, they felt horribly, undeniably real. My dad is dead, I choked out, tears blurring my vision.
Yes,
the thing in his skin said, and the sadness in its voice felt genuine.
He is, and I am so sorry for your loss. But I am here now.
It took another step, and another, until it was standing right over me. It knelt down so that we were at eye level. Its face was inches from mine. I could see every line, every pore of the face I had known my whole life, animated by something I couldn't possibly comprehend.
He loved you more than anything,
it whispered, its breath cold.
And so do I. I will never leave you. I will take care of you. We can be a family, just like he wanted. Forever.
That's where I am now. He let me go upstairs. He walked behind me the whole way. He's in the living room watching the television as if nothing happened, as if my real father isn't lying in the dirt downstairs. He's waiting for me. I'm locked in my closet. I know I can't escape. The doors are locked and he's so much stronger than me. He doesn't need to sleep. He'll never get old. He'll never get sick. He'll just be here, taking care of me. Forever. I can hear him moving. The soft, quiet footsteps are coming down the hall. He's coming to check on me.
Thank you for joining us tonight at the Campfire. I'm your host, Doug Bailey. Declan Roars is our producer, and Nate Corson is our audio engineer. Tonight's story is brought to you by Gamal Frank and narrated by Pat Miller and myself. Thanks for listening, and hey, stay safe out there.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. One of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. Mm-hmm. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
In January of 1915, Ernest Shackleton's ship, Endurance, became encased in the ice in the Weddell Sea. Through determination, grit, and savvy, Shackleton would lead his men through a brutal winter, then over hundreds of miles of Antarctic ice, followed by 800 miles across some of the roughest waters in the world. It is one of the most extraordinary and inspirational journeys in the history of exploration. Find this story and many others at the Explorers Podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts or at explorerspodcast.com.